Hello, good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, here to answer your question and filling in for Dr. Lynn Carson for Tuesday 10 at 10. Let's get started. So first question, we're being asked, I am creating a product between a waffle and a pancake. That sounds interesting. It's called a wakek, or pank waffle, with different sweet fillings. And that person basically tried vacuum sealing their packaging to extend the shelf life, but found out that after 4 to 5 days, it is becoming dry. And they're looking for 2 weeks of shelf life and asking what can they do, what kind of preservatives can I use to achieve 2 weeks. All right, so just to, reading your question, you're talking the product is dry, and then we're talking about adding preservation system or preservative to remove the mold. As your product is dry, in order to solve your issues with your product being dry, you have to reformulate. And what's going on, we're looking at starch retrogradation, so meaning staling. You're staling your product over time, and therefore as your product is staling, which very rapidly, like you would do a bread, it gets hard and it's not palatable, and your consumers are going to say it's not good. So you have two issues. In order to find out what anti-mold preservation system to put in, you have to also understand what issue do you have. As we've talked about, you have to look at points, analytical points such as pH, understand where your pH of your product is, where is your water activity. You're putting a filling as well in there. You have multi-components. So this is a product that requires better engineering in terms of balancing and understanding what packaging would be best, because maybe the packaging is great, but maybe it's not helping with the shelf life of your product. What is the MVTR, which is the moisture vapor transfer rate, understanding how much moisture you're liberating, and maybe you have the wrong packaging. So before recommending, what preservatives to use in your product, I would say, let's go back to the beginning of your formula and then go back around that. I would love to help you. I'm available as a consultant as well. But knowing the information I have here and how, the best way to approach shelf life, because you have two questions in your question. So that's something I'd love to help. But as with what I have, like I said, don't do it. Next question. I'm being asked if there are any parameters for soybean production to produce your own soy delicious flour. I've never made, soy flour, and most of the commercial soy flours that you buy are being defatted. And the reason why is naturally soybeans do contain on average 18% fat. And the reason why they remove the fat for two reasons. The first thing is to make the flour more stable, because the more fat content, the more unstable and prone to oxidative rancidity, meaning, your fat will go bad and then therefore the product will go to waste. And the second thing is by removing the fat and defatting the soybeans, they're allowing for the protein content to go higher, which is what people price today, a higher protein. On average, a soybean runs around 40% naturally from its raw state, and most of the commercial soybean flour that are defatted run around 50-55% protein, which makes it an added value. So that's why if you process your own soybean into flour, I do not have an overall, process, or maybe something we can discuss, or you can reach me through the Baker Forum on the Bakerpedia website. But if, like I said, the key is in its raw state, you get 18% of fat in a soybean, and most of the commercial defatted will get you around an average of a 0.9%, so less than 1% fat in order to sell it. And I don't know, because one of the things with soybean is that beanie odor and that beanie flavor that people don't like with soy. And by removing the fat, they're getting a little bit of a cleaner test. So let me know. I'd love to help out as well. You know, it sounds like it's a pretty neat process that you're trying to put together, but probably a bit more complicated in order to understand how you process it and how, unless you use your product right away. But good question. Next question. Do you know any brands, flour brands in the USA that have low ash flour? So, in general, ash runs. We're looking about the mineral content of the flour, and that's what ash is. And flour is dictated also by the less ash, the better quality, the whiter it is, because you have less of those mineral pigments. So people like that. On average today, what's being seen as accepted is between, and I'm putting everything into one sort of category of flours. If you look at pastry flour, you know, we're looking at the endosperm. You're looking, you know, to go as white as they can to mill the starchy part with less protein. On average, we're running between 0.45 on ash, meaning mineral content, up to 0.65 today that I'm seeing. And usually it's being done by different millers. So your best bet, to answer your question, your best bet, go check around all the millers doing that, and you might have a better chance with smaller mills that have the ability to do smaller runs and to, you know, change the specs in terms of the ash and get it lower. But no, the lower the ash, the higher the price, because it requires a little more work to do for the millers. So, and again, that's the thing. Reach out to me on the forum, and maybe I'll check around in my contacts in the network and see, you know, if there's anybody in the industry, because that will require time to just call all of them and just see what it is. But on top of my mind right now, there's not that I know, that are doing lower than, a typical 4 or 5. One more question, and last question. It is, I've heard of the bake loss in baking. What is it, and what is the use and application for this calculation? All right. It's a good term, and it's a good use to bake loss. It indicates it's measuring how much you lose during your baking process, and we're referring to the moisture content. As we all know, we're saying all breads, it starts with saying the water absorption for flour. And people would say typical flour goes from 60 up to 75% absorption. And that's how much water you put in. But as you bake, you're applying heat in the products, and therefore moisture boils and evaporates all, because at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, you're evaporating. You're basically screening steam, and that is going to go away from your bread. So it's good to measure for a quality standpoint, where you would be able to understand how consistent your bakes are from one to the other. Meaning, if you bake, have a bake loss of 12%, which is an average. That's the mean. That's the average of most typical breads. Then the next day, if you measure it, you can set up a range and say my bake loss should be between 10% to 14%, with an average or mean of 12. So as a quality control point, you can establish for your customers a standardization to control quality. And why is this important? Because your customers, and I've seen it in a lot of bakeries, they overbake, and therefore now their bake loss is going to be 15%. And what does that mean? You're like, well, 15% is good. What it means you removed extra moisture during the baking process, and therefore your customers will get a product. One, you're losing weight from your product because you're removing more moisture. And if you're selling a packaged bread, you have to make a net weight. So it's very important. And the other thing is quality, shelf life. In order to not stale, you need enough moisture in your product. It's important to always also measure the internal temperature, among other things, to ensure that you have quality and consistent product, because quality and consistency sells. No secret about it. So that was the last question. Again, my name is Richard Charpentier. I'm the owner and founder of Baking Innovation, filling in for Dr. Lynn Carson. I hope you have a wonderful day and a happy Tuesday and happy baking. Thank you. Bye.